Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jake. You can also call me Atrocious, and today we've got the top 8 round of the Hiroshima Wave 2 OP09 championships right here, the deck distribution for that top 8. Actually, really interesting top 8. So if you look at this deck distribution, if you don't know Japanese, don't worry, I got you. No more than 2 people of a certain archetype populate this top 8. 2 decks each in terms of the Black Yellow Luffy having 2, which is very, very nice. There were 3 of them that made top 16, I believe, 2 of them advancing. You've also got a pair of Marshall D. Teach and then 2 of Purple Luffy as well. So those 3 decks making it in. We've seen the streak of Teach and the recent success of Purple Luffy from the last tournament. If you haven't watched that, go check that out on the channel. Black Yellow Luffy making a name for itself in this event. But to round out the top 8, we have Nami and 1 Doflamingo as well. So Doflamingo tying the highest population in the top 16, moving down to almost falling out of the top 8. So it's going to be really curious. We already know what the matchup is. I mean, you've seen the title and thumbnail. It's Purple Luffy versus Black Yellow Luffy. So again, before I get into it, make sure, if you do not know, I'm watching the official broadcast. This is an unofficial commentary video of this championship, so I'm just doing it to practice my own commentary. And if you want to go watch this for yourself, feel free to click the link in the description below. That's where the link for the official live stream is, so you don't have to hear me yap. Now, this is going to be a very interesting matchup. I don't know exactly how this goes, but especially if you're Black Yellow Luffy, right? Purple Luffy is one of the premier decks of the format, so you gotta think that this build, this version, has that matchup in mind in terms of the Black Yellow Luffy. Really thinking about the Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy being able to ramp, right, could be really advantageous in the mid kind of stages of the game, especially if the Black Yellow Luffy really struggles to self-inflict or get themselves down in life. We might see this Purple Luffy really build board, right, really build up its strong points with the Luffy Taro, right, Sangoro, Bon Clays, even to rush in with stuff like Charlotte Linlin, the secret rare Luffy, the Rush Sanji from OP09, to just slew a bunch of big bodies before the Black Yellow Luffy can do its awakening effects, right? So it's going to be really key to see what kind of stuff is going on in this Luffy in terms of being able to combat that strategy, right? Something that Black Yellow Luffy players really always need to think about when piloting this deck, this being one of the more punishable decks in the format. But we're going to start off by seeing the Black Yellow Luffy's hand right here. Has a decent hand, I think, to start off. A couple different search options to find some key pieces in the deck with those Garps. You've also got the little baby Ace right there. Could be nice though. So we know that they at least run potentially a 1/1 package of the Ace in here. We do have deck lists that will show at the end of the video, don't you worry. We also have a Kuzan in hand, which might be nice if we have the even curve, but ending off the hand is a Gecko Moira right here in the top corner. It's a little bit covered up, but trust me, it is an 8-drop Gecko. Moving into the Purple Luffy's hand though, the Purple Luffy does have a couple good cards in here, including the 1-drop Trafalgar Law. That's that alternate art right there, as well as the counter event. I think it's Gum Gum Giant is what it's called in the translation. You've also got a couple cards that are very good, either going first or second in those 4 drops of Mr. 2 and also the Zorojuro. Zorojuro being another really good searcher to find you some key pieces, and then a nice 2K for a Nosuke if you need that card. Going in here, we're underway of this tournament. I didn't see who was going first. It looks like it's going to be the Black Yellow Luffy is probably going to play down that Garp, but no, just decides to pass off the turn. So super interesting not using that Garp right now, but is going in with the Luffy. The Luffy on the 2-Dawn turn is going to go ahead and do one for that Trafalgar Law, it looks like. Maybe not stalling out right there, but playing that Trafalgar Law, going ahead and doing a quick search through the deck. Does get to look at the top 4, and through the top 4 finds a Straw Hat or Heart Pirate card of a cost of 2 or more. Plenty of them in this deck, and it looks like a couple options in here with the Sanji. The Sanji is a nice 2K to get, but also the Robin. So that Robin right there, Nico Robin, very cool, and a kind of fringe card in a lot of these different decks. Basically, it's a 2-drop blocker that you can play if you're curious on what that does. Has a little bit of synergy with stuff like the Luffy Taro, right, to be able to play down, and also it's just pretty cheap and efficient. So passing the turn after that, going into Luffy's 3 Dawn turn. Let's see if he plays any of the Garps at this point. So is going to go ahead and swing 6, going to force out a 2K right here, this Franosuke, or take a life. And is going to 2K out of that one. We'll see with the 2 Dawn if he plays the baby ace or goes in with the Garps, and it looks like Garps is going to be the strategy. The Garp, a very nice key piece in this, looks at the top 5 and finds a Sabo, Ace, or Luffy with a cost of 5 or less, which there's so many options in this deck. Your deck kind of revolving around Ace, Sabo, and Luffy, but doesn't find one in there. Definitely not something that you see often, but we saw some interesting cards in this deck, like Raigo. Raigo being such an interesting tech for this deck. Does find a couple key pieces right there with the baby Sabo. Going to be nice to be able to filter maybe some big Sabos, the blocker Sabos, and also finds a big ace. The big ace will combo well with the baby ace that they've got in hand. And it's also bottom decking a couple other searches with that Garp and those 2 searcher events, the 3 brothers bond. So opts for the ace, maybe a little bit more aggression, and passes off the turn after top decking that Hiyori as well. So moving into the purple Luffy's turn, now at 4 Dawn. We'll see if they end up using leader effect to go to 5. Doesn't really have a good reason to go to 5 outside of swinging potentially 6 with the leader, but could go ahead and choose either the Bon Clay or the Zoro Juro. So is going to go off and use the leader effect, going to ramp up 1 Dawn, does find a Sangoro right there, and does get a couple different cards. Could be nice, especially now that you have the Luffy Taro in hand. I believe that card is. Need a little bit of a close-up with that color difference. It looks like Luffy Taro and not the Sanji, that 7-drop. So is pretty set up for the coming turn. So is going to go ahead, swing 5 right here. And one thing that we might see, no, I don't think it would work like that as they take the life. I was going to say maybe going in and playing the Bon Clay and then attaching the rest of the Dawn and swinging with the Law. But what actually might be better is playing the Bon Clay, right, to ramp up another Dawn, but then use the 2 active Dawn that you have to play the Nico Robin, right? A nice 2-drop blocker. So could get a little bit more of the defensive if you want to do that strategy, but looks like is potentially going to rest all 5 for the Sangoro. I don't mind this play right now. If you do want to go ahead and do that play, and it looks like that's what he's leaning towards in this, going to play that Sangoro. The Sangoro is nice because when you're at 8 or more Dawn, when you attack, you get to draw a card. So even though they're going to be moving to 7 next turn, could either do one of 2 things. One, play that Mr. 2 to ramp 1 and get to 8, or go ahead and use leader effect again to go up to 8 Dawn, right? So there's multiple ways that they can move in this strategy depending on the swings and the moves that the Black Yellow Luffy goes in this turn. But he's going to start off with a nice 6K swing right here. So you don't have any 2Ks in your hand right now, but you've got a couple options of things that you can do, and decide, so you know what, I'm going to take this life right here and get a nice another Nico Robin. And with the rest of the 4 Dawn, does play that Kuzan to draw 1 card, and is going to be really nice in synergy with different KO effects that they might have, right? Especially with the Kuzans when attacking of -4 is going to be really nice once those big bodies start to come down. So grabbing a Luffy Taro off the top deck is at 7 Dawn in total right here. So doesn't really have a way without taking a life, I think, to be able to get up to 8 to draw a card with the Sangoro, but does have a couple different plays that they can use right now to be able to get a little bit of pressure going. So starts out with a nice 5k swing. That 5k swing gonna go in at life. We'll see if the Luffy decides to take, right? They do have to think about a Sangoro swing, and you don't want to take too much life too fast in this deck, right? That's one of the reasons why Black Yellow Luffy is a little bit more difficult in terms of a skill cap in comparison to other decks, but is going to think about countering out on this one, maybe with that 5-drop Luffy from these starter decks. So is going to be curious to see where they decide to go on this. Is going to counter out with that Luffy, like I mentioned. Does have, I believe, a baby Luffy in hand. So once that leader effect goes, you've got a couple babies to be able to get some power-ups, right? And some evolutions going, as I like to call them. I don't know the specific term, actually. But with the rest of the Dawn still at 7, what is the Luffy player going to do on this one? With the 7-drop Luffy, you do have to play a 5 or less Straw Hat Pirates type card, and that Mr. 2, I believe, in the deck. Not actually a Straw Hat card, so goes ahead and swings 6 with the Sangoro first to try to see what he does on this one. Again, no draws, so probably not going to be using leader effect on this turn. Does get a potential trigger, so we'll see what this trigger is. Are they going to let's see? It's a 3 Brothers Bond event, so I personally like using this, especially because you whiffed a Garp earlier. Using this 3 Brothers Bond to try to find a Sabo, Luffy, or Ace can be really, really good. And we see 4 different targets in here. It's 2 of the 5-cost Luffys and 1 baby Luffy along with 1 baby Sabo. So grabs the baby Sabo. We know one got bottom decked earlier in one of the searches, so just wants to have one now. You know, don't want to bottom deck too many of them. So grabs that guy, doesn't put him in hand yet. I don't know why he hasn't, but the Luffy player is going to go ahead and play that Luffy Taro, like I mentioned, to play down a 5-cost or less. And usually you will almost always play this Zoro Juro. The Zoro Juro, real nice inclusion in this deck and in the starter deck in general. Goes ahead and looks at the top 5, reveals a purple Straw Hat card, and puts it in the hand. So finding a 2K with that Uso Hachi. So the Uso Hachi, a great card we saw in the last purple Luffy match that we watched. Does have that on play of resting a 5 or less character if you have 8 or more Dawn, which will happen pretty soon for this deck, and very susceptible in Black Yellow Luffy, right? The Sabo blockers being 5 or less, but is also just a nice 2K to have. The Black Yellow Luffy player getting the Raigo down, and the judge saying, hey, please move your deck into the deck area. Don't let it stray too far. The Raigo is going to be really nice if a starve method happens with purple Luffy, right? And especially when you're hovering at 1 or 0 life, Raigo is really nice to just get rid of any pesky character on the field that could cause you issues in the game. So we'll see kind of how he plays this out now in this turn. I think this is one of the more crucial turns, right, within this game. Is sitting at 7 Dawn right now, so is going to attach 3 and swing at the Sangoro, I believe. So is going to go ahead, swing 8,000 power at that Sangoro and minus the Luffy by 4, so putting him at a 3 cost. I'm curious about what the play is going to be here from this Black Yellow Luffy, because I would have thought that he would leave 5 up for the Rocket Luffy, being that that Rocket Luffy is a 5 cost. So we'll see exactly what he's got planned right now. The Luffy does need to decide whether or not they want to counter out of this swing. Sangoro going to be really nice for drawing cards in the next turn. Do you let this go? And he does. He says, you know what? I don't want to give up 3 cards potentially for that with the lack of 2Ks in my hand, so I'm just gonna go do it. And it looks like actually the Hiyori's coming in, so this is actually the good play of what he was trying to do with the 4. Playing the Hiyori allows him to manipulate his top life, and so once this baby Luffy comes down and he uses that activate main, he's going to look at that Rocket Luffy that he put on the field, essentially cheating out that Luffy for 1 Dawn less. So a very smart play, very good play to get rid of that Luffy Taro, and maybe the purple Luffy saying, oh man, I should have maybe countered out of that one to have another body on the field. And now just a 7K swing going in. Remember, with that baby Luffy on the evolution, the leader gets plus 2,000 power until their next turn. So this 7k swing is going to go ahead and take a life. No trigger on that one. Going to be another Sangoro, which is nice because you're more than likely maybe playing another purple 7-cost purple Luffy on this turn. And then going in, I think off of the draw or the top deck, found a 2k Makino for that purple Luffy, and then the draw finding another Gecko through that Egghead Luffy effect. The purple Luffy is going to go ahead and swing 5, I believe, at the Kuzan. Maybe going to do a lot of focusing now on that guy on the field. And so I believe is at 8 Dawn total at this point. So has a couple different options of what they could do. What is that? I think that 4 cost that they have in hand on the very right is a promo Hiyori. Or not Hiyori. What's that guy's name? Hitokiri Kamazo. That's the guy's name. I couldn't remember it at first. But does have to think about the rest of this turn, right? Swinging at this Kuzan, do you defend against it or do you take it and decides to allow the Kuzan to go away? You do have the Geckos to be able to bring it back. Usually does not happen though. With the deck, usually the Geckos will just bring back little babies, if anything. And so, but now the purple Luffy has to decide whether or not they want to swing. Do they want to go ahead and swing at life, right? Let the black yellow Luffy take this final life, or do they want to just continue to build up the board and not do much else? And so at least is going to play this Luffy Taro right here, is going to rest that 7, I'm sorry, and is going to go ahead play Sangoro again. So leaves 1 Dawn open right there for potentially the Gum Gum Giant if they want to, but leaving that Luffy at the last life. This is a strategy that we see a lot of times that people use against black yellow Luffy, saying, you know what, for your last life, you're going to have to do it yourself. I'm not going to do it. You're going to have to. And so does put the black yellow Luffy in a little bit more of a tricky spot, right? Doesn't have a good way to get rid of that last life at this point, even at, I believe, the 9 Dawn turn right now. So gonna be curious to see. They do have that 1-drop Makino that can get them out of this last life, right? But then you're in an odd position with your leader effect, right? You would go down to 0. You don't have any blocker Sabos really at this point, and to do any evolutions, you won't have any blockers on the field to potentially defend against your life. So you've got to count on the counter in hand, but goes for the Makino anyway. You do have to take the top or bottom card of your life and add it to your hand, and then return your life in any order. Not having any life, obviously the order is already set. Does find a baby Sabo in there. That's not a big Sabo though. You would have loved to see potentially a big Sabo come down in this one, but is going to probably need to use leader effect at least in this game. And so with the leader effect, remember with the Luffy, you do have to discard 1, and then you can add 2 cards of 5-cost characters, I'm sorry, but you can do that either from your hand or your trash. So has plenty of options to do that, but is going to go ahead and attach for swing with Garp. So going in on the aggression with the Garp, swinging 6 at lead, is going to force a 2k counter of, what was that guy's name? Hitokiri Kamazo right there. I haven't had to say that guy's name a lot in any of the commentary streams. Does attach to the Luffy. Looks like they're going to try to go to at least 7,000 power in this turn, maybe playing a baby. And so going ahead and pitching that ace from the hand to use that leader effect, goes ace and a Luffy. Is going to probably play a baby ace and evolve into that, put a little bit of pressure and swing 7 after this ace comes down. So going to be a 7,000 power swing and a 9,000 power swing coming in from the black yellow Luffy in the rest of this turn. Starts off with the 7 first. I do like the 7 first. I think it's better, obviously, to swing with some of your lower characters at this point. And we're going to see when the Gum Gum Giant could come out in the turn. The Gum Gum Giant could come out right now. I don't think you want to take both life, but is thinking about maybe doing a 2k, 1k combo in that Usohachi and Bonclay. So as the Black Yellow Luffy, you probably love seeing the Usohachi, hit the bin. And the 9,000 power swing is going to take a life. Going to be another Sangoro, so no 2Ks left in hand. Couple of blockers, which is nice, but no 2Ks are left for the Luffy, and only at 9 Dawn in this turn. Playing the couple of the Luffy Taros has prevented you from going all the way to 10, but you don't really need 10 in this deck. This deck not playing any 10 drops, I can confirm in this. Only 9s at the highest. So with no 9-drop Secret Rare Luffys or 9-drop Linlins, we're going to see how they navigate in this turn. Is going to be able to draw one at least on the Sangoro, but if you want to swing with anything else at life other than the Luffy Taro, you're going to have to be adding Dawn, as that Black Yellow Luffy is 7,000 power. But starts off with the Trafalgar Law, just swings at the Garp, wants to get rid of it, right? You don't want any more swings than you have to take at this stage of the game. And with the 9, thinking about if they want to attach it to any of these characters, and is going to start off with the Luffy Taro and a swing at leader. It is going to be a 9,000 power swing. So this 9,000 power swing is going to go ahead and garner a life potentially. Remember, as Black Yellow Luffy, if you do take a life, if it is face up, it goes to the bottom of the deck instead of in your hand. So this Luffy, if the life is taken, as you're seeing right now, is going to go to the bottom, does not go to the hand. Says, you know what, I don't want to get rid of any of these cards, and actually couldn't even counter out if they wanted to on this, only having 2K counter worth in hand right now. So actually, if the purple Luffy just goes ahead and swings really wide, they could win this game right here. Straight up. So we're going to see if he sees the line. So many non-counter cards in hand. I didn't even realize how much non-counter was left in the hand. Can the Luffy see the line? We're going to see. It could be interesting if they don't see the line and this elongates to another turn. Is going to go ahead, attach one, swing the Sangoro 7 and draw one card right there. So is going to have to pitch a card. It's going to be that Baby Sabo, only 1K counter left in hand. If they go ahead and attach to the Luffy and swing 7 and then a couple more to the Zoro Juro, we could see Luffy move into the top 4. Purple Luffy, that is, move into the top 4, but holds on to, I think, 4 Dawn right now, thinking about 4 and 3. So either attaching it or playing the Onami. What are they going to do right here? Is thinking, you know what, let me see what's in their trash. What are their options going into the next turn? Can they go ahead and extend? Oh, this is a crucial point. This is one of the things that you need to think about as the purple Luffy, right? Because if you go ahead and spend the Dawn playing the blockers, such as like the Onami or the Nico Robin, that Egghead Luffy is in the trash. So if there is a baby Luffy in there, which you know there is, right? A Gecko can bring that out. You're going to get punished for that and maybe get hit for game with some of these characters that they can bring out to the table. So it's going to be really interesting right here. Thinking maybe the 6 cost Sanji, and is go ahead. I think they're going to attach and swing. Attaching all of this Dawn would clear them the game, maybe leaving that 1 Dawn open for the potential Gum Gum Giant if they need to for the defense. And the swing right here is going to go ahead and claim that game. So purple Luffy picking up the win. Definitely not the way that I thought it was going to go. I thought we were going to get a little bit longer in that game, but purple Luffy just noticing, okay, I think maybe because he played multiple 2Ks down, right, that Hiyori, played the Makino, and also let that 5-drop Luffy go into the bottom of the life. He's like, I think I can maybe go for game at this point, and he did, capitalizing on the purple, or on the black yellow Luffy, I'm sorry. So really interesting game and matchup as well. We'll see if black yellow Luffy can make it into the top 4, because there were 2 of them in this top 8. But for now, let's go take a look at some deck lists. So I believe this is the Black Yellow Luffy's deck list. This deck list is also on firefist.gg. If you haven't seen that site, great for tournament results in here. It does have the Raigo. So if this is the list, heavy count of Raigo in here, maybe working out really, really well for him. in this battle. You've got several 2K options in the Flampe, Hiyori, and a one of Makino. And a lot of this deck is the usual set of cards that we see in here, right? A lot of blocker Sabos, Gecko, Egghead Luffy, the big 5-drop Luffy, and the baby package in here, right? Along with the Three Brothers Bond. A lot of this deck, in terms of how it adjusts in the meta, revolves around a couple ratios, right? One of those ratios being the 2-2 line of ace in this deck. The baby ace and the big ace, we've seen people kind of waver in between like 1 and 2, maybe even sometimes 3 of these lines of ace. This person opting for a 2-2, and definitely probably want to run a 2-2 if you've got a couple different cards in here. Some other ratio cards like the Kuzan, right? Not a card that we always see in this deck, but not only having the good synergy with Gecko, as I mentioned before, right? And also that when attacking being so good and is a huge reason why this card is so valuable. A neat inclusion in the deck for specific matchups. The Ivankov, something that we're starting to more regularly see, I feel like, in these black-yellow Luffy lists, especially since 08 came out. Just a nice blocker and setup card for this deck. And then the Raigo, not something that we've seen a ton of, but like I mentioned, being able to KO anything on the field, especially when you hover at like 1 and 0 life for a lot of games, the Raigo makes sense, right? And can be a really cool card to be able to get rid of pesky big blocker characters, especially something like that 10-drop Blackbeard, right? That 12,000 power blocker, just so good, and could be a huge reason why this card is in this deck, right? Especially with Blackbeard's success in the last several weeks in this OP09 meta. Maybe that's the key in order to be more favored within that matchup. Very, very cool to see. I like this. I would love to see maybe like hopefully the top 4 round is Black Yellow Luffy and Blackbeard. I hope Black Yellow Luffy continues to reign in this because I want to see more of these matchups with these 09 decks with Black Yellow Luffy. I know Black Yellow Luffy, very popular deck. Now here's the deck list for our purple Luffy players. So very similar to what we've seen in the last tournament, right? If you watch that playlist right there, it's got the Straw Hat package for this, kind of what I would call the starter deck package, right? A 4 of the Luffy Taro, Sangoro, and Zoro Juro. You've also got plenty of other great options in the Onami, Usohachi, Nico Robin, and great inclusions of 09 cards in here with the 2 of Sanji, which we've seen a lot in different purple decks, right? I think in the Foxy run that we saw last week was running this card. The 9-cost Luffy Rush character, just a great card at 9 Dawn, especially as a 10,000 power rusher. The 1-drop that allows you to find these Straw Hats, and I think with the Hitokiri Kamazo, is he a hard pirate card? I know he's Smile. Oh no, he's a Supernova Kid pirate card. My apologies. But is a great 2K to have because with nice draw in this deck, right? From the 2 Luffys that you've got here, and potentially a Onami later in the game, especially in something like the Blackbeard matchup, right? Hitokiri Kamazo on your turn once per turn. When you return Dawn cards on your field to your Dawn deck, you KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. Great for potentially like Doc Q or more importantly, Vasco Shot. In that specific matchup, we've seen a lot more 2-drop blockers in this format that I think we've seen in the last several months of the game, whether that's the East or the West, right? The Nico Robin in this list specifically being a 2 cost. So could be nice as well in the mirror. And then your top end also including Charlotte Linland, just an incredible purple card, right? Especially with a leader like Purple Luffy from OP05, that using that leader effect takes your own life, right? Self-inflicts life. The Charlotte Linland is great for doing a little bit of healing, right? And getting rid of pesky characters. That it's like one of the reasons that the 8-cost Katakuri, right? That secret rare is so good. It'll be curious to see how Purple Luffy continues on in this tournament, but let's take a look and see what the next matchup is. Oh, the next matchup is actually going to be a Marshall D Teach Mirrors. So I'd be really curious to see this one. The Marshall Teach Mirror, I have never thought about whatsoever. Does depend on who gets more, what is it, Jesus Burgess? But we'll have to wait and see on that one. I'm trying to get these videos done in the same day, get as many of them done as possible. So if you're one of the lucky members on the channel, you'll be able to watch these early as they come out. If you're a channel member already, you can't watch the next round. But if you're not a channel member watching this on the day that it came out, you'll be able to watch the next round early if you become a channel member. Very confusing to say. I wish there was an easier way. I'll have to think about that. But thank you all again so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more as we try to reach 10,000 subscribers, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.